George Danzer, welcome to the podcast, The Hero's Journey. How is life?
I'm very good, thanks.
Very good. You're looking good, man. You're looking good. I know that you was born in Brazil, right? But I also read that you spent a lot of time in Portugal and Austria. But where exactly did you spend your childhood? Because, you know, where we spend our childhood and what our childhood is like is a really important part of our story. So let's start there. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up mostly in Portugal and Germany. I was born in Brazil, but I moved when I was around 4 years old. So then I spent most of the time going to kindergarten and school and everything in Portugal, close to Lisbon. And moved to Germany when I was 12 to go to school there. So those the two major blocks, like 8 years in Portugal and then like 6-7 years in Bavaria. That's where I spent most of the time growing up.
Now, I was 10 when my parents moved me from England to Wales, and I found that heartbreaking. Like, I had to leave all my friends and move to this place where I knew nobody, and I really found it difficult. What was the move like for you as a child, going from Portugal to Bavaria?
Yeah, it's very different. One is the language, of course. It's so different. Like, Portuguese and German are nearly as far as like English and what you speak in Wales.
Well, yeah, you're right.
No, it's really hard to adapt as a kid. Not learning German, I knew how to speak German, but in Bavaria they speak this hard dialect, especially in the part where I went to. And you're just an outsider if you don't speak it, because I speak like the German that the people from the like middle to north of Germany speak, and then you're in a Bavarian town and everybody knows everybody, and you're the new guy and you can't even speak the correct words. Then it's always hard to grow into it. But then, you know, kids, you always find a way to participate and have a hobby. So I think it's more complicated later in life. As a kid, it always feels difficult, but then very quickly you adapt.
How did it feel being an outsider, and how long did you feel like an outsider? And a third question bolted onto that: how did that shape who you are today, or did it in any way?
In Bavaria, you are always an outsider, even if you have lived there if you moved there with like 2 years old, and then that's too late. You know, you have to be born in Bavaria to not be an outsider there. So that's, I think that's a way to be a little more driven in stuff. If you're always the outsider, you're always trying a little bit harder than the other ones to make up for it. And yeah, that's one of the things that I think when I was young and always competitive in games and sports, that makes it just a little bit, I don't know how to say it. It's not hard. It's just like you try harder.
Yeah, I mean, I totally relate to that, because I remember being 10, sat in this class, not in one specific moment, but, you know, over time, just thinking to myself, what have I got to do to make friends? Like, what have I got to do to be noticed here? And I messed about. Like, I thought I started misbehaving, and then suddenly people liked me, and I also connected through football. But there was an element of the decisions I made back then, George, about how I was going to behave, that shaped my personality of who I am today, which I don't really like, and I find it really difficult to shift. Like, very egocentric, so the drive to fit in and be competitive for me went a little bit too far. Like, was you able to balance it?
For me, it was more like I was copying what people were doing to try to fit in, not so much to like try to be like the crazy guy and do weird stuff, which as a kid often is the way to get recognition from the other kids, to do the really stupid things. But more like just copy them, do what they do, and then it's gonna work out somehow. Yeah.
Now, and that copy format, like I often think of professional poker players. Let me take a step back a minute. I often think of the vast majority of humanity as being on this path of least resistance, right? So, we get older, we get married, we get a house, we get a car, we get a good job, but we're not really thinking about what's going on. We're just kind of like doing what we're supposed to do, like the blueprint of society. Like we're just copying what we're supposed to do, or we're asking our parents, what should I do? Oh, you do this, ask our doctor, what do I do? Do this. Whereas professional poker players, they're not on that path of least resistance because they're actually doing the direct opposite to what society wants them to do. Their job is very different to what society wants. That they have freedom, they're not locked down. They're doing something which a lot of like society looks down upon, like gambling, for example. So going back to when you were a kid growing up in Germany and you find you're the odd one out trying to kind of like copy other people to kind of like fit in there, take me through the timeline of how that evolves into developing, basically going over to this special world, going over to being unique and doing something different and being different to everybody else.
I think that in poker, I can see myself doing the same things again. So like when I want to become better at poker, my go-to strategy to improve was to look what do the best guys do and just copy them one-to-one, because that's how that's what I was doing back then. And I was still doing it when training poker. So it relates to the style, but for the career, for me to become a poker player, when I think back, I think that was always going to happen, because no matter if I moved around or not, because one of the first things I got as a kid was a book about all the games that are played all over the world. It was a really big book, and there was from the earliest games that humanity started to play through all the modern games, or what was modern back then, because computer games were not big, so that there was a advancement since the book came out. But that was the book that I was looking at when I was 4 or 5 years old, and I was just going through, oh, I haven't played this game. What's this? And I was just playing like hundreds of different games throughout my childhood. And I think that's where the poker, becoming a poker player, comes from. And the moving around just changed how I learn stuff and how I adapt to environments, I think.
So how old was you when you moved from Germany to Austria? Was that much later in your life?
Yes, that was when I was already, when I left university and started playing poker, and then I moved to Australia.
So what was you like as a lad in school? Was you a nerdy kind of lad? Was you a jock? What type of kid was you in school?
In Portugal, before I moved to Germany, so before I was 12, I was more like of the funny dude that played football and make a lot of jokes. And then when I moved to Bavaria, and I was the new guy, and then I become the nerdy guy that just plays Dungeons and Dragons and chess and poker and badminton.
I used to love Dungeons and Dragons. So you started playing poker at a really young age, right? It's like 15, right? Is that right?
15, 16. It was during the chess events. I was big into chess back then, playing all the national championships and stuff. And one of the chess guys, and we were always playing cards after the games were finished. We would start a round of Skat or Schafskopf. That's the two German games. and we would have a little bit of money on the line because as chess players, competitive ones, you always want to push a little harder. So we were playing for real cards, and then one day a guy says, "Oh, there's Texas Hold'em. Have you guys played it? It's from America. It's a really cool game." And then we started playing Texas Hold'em after we finished our poker games. I remember when I was 15, I think. It was the Bavarian Championships, and we finished our games and went into a room and started playing Texas Hold'em every day for like 10 days.
Let's go back a little bit then to chess. So you played at quite a high level. How old was you when you started getting into chess, and who was it that first alerted you to the fact that you is actually a little bit better than the rest of the competition?
That was when I was 5. I played my first round of chess against my dad. My dad taught me how to play chess. And then he bought me a Mephisto. That was one of the early chess computers. Like, it was a real hardware computer made out of wood with small magnets in there and red lights to show you where to go. And it has a computation model in the box. So it was a huge wooden box. And I got one of those when I was 8, I think. And I was just sitting there reading as soon as I could read, I was reading chess books and playing against the Mephisto, trying to beat the thing. And then one day I noticed that you could open it up, and it had a small display where it was showing you what moves it was calculating and how it thought that the moves would play out, and put a rating on it, like plus 0.2 for this move, plus 0.6 for this move. And it was showing it for both sides. So it helped, getting into analyzing what are good and what are bad moves, and how do computers think that this works. Yeah. And then as I was having fun with that, my dad sent me to a junior training session close by in Lisbon, and there was an old German guy who was called Matzinger. He was a great dude, and he noticed that I was playing better than the other guys because I was sitting in my room playing against this computer thing. And then this year I finished second in the Portuguese championships. And then the next year I won it, and then they banned me from playing in Portugal.
Why? Because you was too good.
And I didn't have the Portuguese passport, right?
Oh,
because we moved
right.
there, so I wasn't Portuguese, and it was not legal, it turned out. So after, they had to roll it back, but then I already had moved. So from 10 years old to 12 years old, I wasn't allowed to play any competition. That was quite bad.
How did it feel not being able to play? Because it sounds like, well, first of all, how did it feel to play chess? And then how did it feel not to be able to play chess?
Yeah, that was really bad. I was ready to marry the next Portuguese women's champion. That she was 12 years old. She was kind of nice, actually. And then I went and said, why can't I marry her?
I like
so
it.
I can play again. And the Portuguese guys were, the best idea ever. Let's do it. We are ready. And then my dad and my mom, they weren't into that idea, and so I couldn't do it, and felt bad. But I looked into other things to play. So back then I had a old computer, 8068 or what it was, and I was just getting a little bit into programming then, and playing like the first computer games and modding them and doing stuff like that. Then from when I was 10 until I was 12. And then when we moved to Germany, I went back into chess.
Chess, to me, I've never played chess at a big level, but it seems, when I think about it, like thin slicing it, like a more of a solitary pastime, both learning how to play it and playing it. Is that accurate, or is it a social aspect? What was it like for you as chess in terms of how it impacted on your social life?
In Portugal, I really loved it as soon as I had the club, the chess club where I was training, and it was a really social thing. You went there, you always played this little tournaments against the guys, and then you had a trainer come in and teach you new stuff, and it was really social. And then when it gets competitive, then it becomes solitary because you're just hours learning openings by core and all of this stuff. And I really hated it when I was around 15 and it looked like I could really go into it, maybe even professionally. I didn't enjoy it at all. And as soon as I stopped and I started playing poker and said, okay, the chess career is not for me. I'm going to focus on other stuff and maybe even go study at some university when I finished school. Then it was social again, and I really enjoyed the club nights with the other poker players that were around my level, just having fun again. So yeah, the more competitive it gets, the more solitary.
So on that then, was growing up as a kid, and I know when we're at that age, we nowhere near kind of have the tools or the wherewithal to figure out what we want to do with our life. Christ, I'm in my 40s and I'm still figuring it out. But how was you thinking back then? Was you thinking, I want to be a professional chess player and play chess all my life? Or was you more aware that it might not work out, I'm going to have to do something else? How was you thinking back then?
I just wanted to play games all the time.
All the time.
I just wanted to play, and I wanted to become. When I was playing something, I was trying to get better and become the best and beat everybody. So that's how I was thinking. And then at some point, I was trying too hard, and I got a little bit bored. I picked up the next game, and I wasn't thinking more than, let's say, a week ahead. I think at that time.
So at the time when you're playing chess and you realize you go up a level, it's almost like you're in poker and you're playing mid stakes and now you go to high stakes, and then suddenly you have to study every single day to keep pace with everybody. And you talked about that studying in chess and you didn't like it. Was it you didn't like it because studying chess is boring, so you wasn't getting any enjoyment out of it? Or was there an element of fear of either being successful or not making it? How did it work out for you? How did it pan out?
I just didn't enjoy the not being creative part, because in a chess game, when you sit there and you're thinking about it, it's a very creative process. You have all those thoughts, how this position can develop, and you have to have ideas and think outside the box from time to time. But when you're studying, there's times where it's just learning by core. And you have to do it to be able to be creative later, because if you lose every game in the first 10 moves, there is no point in being more creative than the opponent later on when the game's already over. And in poker, it was similar, that I was always enjoying the being creative part, and I would just do the other stuff. But I always wanted to mix it up. So what I was doing in poker late on was I would always really hardcore study, like January, February into March, and then go on tour. Play the scoop, play the last EPTs up to the final, and then go to the World Series and have like the spring up until summer, really just traveling and not studying anymore, just playing the game. And then I would take some time off. Then I would play a bunch of hands when I came back online, like 100, 200, maybe 300,000 hands in September most of the years, and then just the rest of the year was mixed, sometimes traveling, sometimes playing at home. But I would never just do one thing. I wouldn't sit down and say 1 year I'm going to be supernova elite this year and just grind it out. I couldn't do that. And then I couldn't even play only Texas Hold'em for more than 2 years. And then I would say, no, screw this. I'm going to play No Limit Deuce the next year. Only No Limit Deuce.
Yeah.
I would still train the same amount. It's not that I wouldn't train it, but now it's more creative. It's a new game. You start getting into it. You have solutions. Not as many players play it. You're not as closed as being to a solved game where just learning by core what the computer tells you to do. But now you're developing your own strategies and trying them out in tournaments and see how other people react and improve on them. And you're back to the creative part. And yeah, in chess, it was the same.
It sounds like an artist who, just wants to be creative, and they don't care if they're painting or sculpting or writing. They just want to be creative. It sounds a little bit like that. Like for you, it's about creation, and it doesn't matter if that's Hearthstone or Fortnite or poker or chess or tiddlywinks, whatever it is. It's the creation aspect of it that gets you fired up.
Exactly, yeah.
Right, talk to me a little bit about realizing that you're not interested about learning the GTO of chess, right? And then becoming more poker. What happened in your life between being thought of as a potential professional chess player to a professional poker player? What were the milestone moments, 1 or 2 milestone moments in that time era?
So first I finished school. There was still, now let's say I'm 16, there's still 2 years of school where I'm not going to every chess tournament anymore. I'm not training like 4 or 5 days a week, but having just one session on Tuesdays and then every second week play a tournament on the weekend. Still a bunch of chess, but not as much. And I was playing more football, and you start to go out a little with your friends on the weekends. So yeah, just regular school. And then I applied for university, had like half a year off. You do the civil service in Germany, where you help elderly people or disabled people. You do something for society. That was mandatory back then. And if you don't join the army, it's not anymore, but I really enjoyed that part. So I was driving the food and helping the people in the community. So I did that for a short while, and then it was off to university. And in university, there was the question to how do you finance it? So I can either go work on the side, I could have my parents pay for it, or I could, play poker if I'm good enough. And I tried that, and was financing my studies by playing like 2-3 hours of poker every day. So that's when I started playing more poker, because I had to do it every day to pay the rent at the end of the month. And I was playing some small stakes, only making enough for that. And sometimes there was enough for the summer vacation, and sometimes not. So I did that until 2005, and then poker picked up, because like 2003 Moneymaker won the World Series. Right now it started being more popular in Europe too, and juicy tournaments popping up, and I heard of them. And so in 2005 I went to the World Series the first time to check it out myself. And then in the end of the year, I decided that I should take a break from the studies, because it was too good of a poker adventure waiting for me. And so in January 2006, I took a break from the studies and just started to travel to the first tournaments in Europe.
So at this time, as you're doing your studies, what was you studying, by the way?
Microengineering.
So while you're studying microengineering, was you studying it with a view to becoming a microengineer, or using that kind of like knowledge in a particular area, or was you thinking to yourself, well, I'm stuck here, I got to do this because like my mum wants me to do it, my dad wants me to do it, like Germany wants me to do it, but I really love poker, but I got to finish it because I've started it, like a sunk cost thing? Where was you with university?
I was enjoying it. It's a very nice life. I was in Freiburg, a very good city to study. And the microengineering department there is awesome. The guys. Actually, my sister just finished her doc in the same position that I was, same lab, everything. So it's stayed in the family. But I was enjoying it. I was playing 3 hours of poker. I was staying a lot in the lab doing. I applied as it's called Hilfswissenschaftler or Wissenschaftliche Hilfskraft in Germany, where you help out in the lab. You get like $4 an hour and just do some practical work while you're studying. And I had my office there, and I was staying there most of the time, using the fast internet connection, of course, to crawl all the hands of PokerStars while I'm playing, filling my database. So in the morning when I showed up, I could already tell what the opponents did overnight and who was on tilt and not. But still going to all the classes and. So I hadn't made my mind up at that point. I was just, happy that I can finance it, and I had a good team and everything. So I didn't even think about what the future would bring. I didn't even know at that point that you could be a professional poker player, right? Of course, it was like a fad online. You could play a little bit, and there was enough people on the small stakes that had no clue that when you read 2 books and have played for 3 years like me, that you could make a profit. But I didn't think about it as, let's try to become good enough to be able to do this for 10 or 20 years. And that just developed from there. And there were no other German professional poker players that I could talk to at that point.
It's crazy, isn't it, when you think about how many there are today?
Yeah, this was nobody was telling me, so here you have to do this, then you can travel the world and earn enough. It was more like I was trying it out by accident. I was good enough. Now I started 2006 touring. It worked out somehow. I started writing a blog, and now the people were asking me, how do you do it? It was more like the other way around, that I could tell people now how it is to be a professional poker player, even not being one myself or not seeing myself as one. Only in like 2008, 2009, I thought, okay, let's try this for real and be a professional poker player. I think.
So my boy's 18 at the moment. So he's just finished his studies, and he's got me banging on at him, when are you going to get a job? When are you going to get a job? He's got his mum banging on at him, when are you going to get a job? When are you going to get a job? And when I talk to him in his most vulnerable moments, he's able to tell me about how fearful he is of life at the moment, how he loves being a kid, and he loves playing games, and he loves just fucking about with his mates. But then there's this pull to be an adult, and there's this pull to get a job, and there's this pull to earn money. And also he's realizing that he needs money to run his car. He needs money to take his girlfriend out. He needs money to go out with his mates. And then there's are you going to take drugs? Are you going to drink alcohol? He's got all these kind of like pulling things at him. How did you deal with that aspect of your life as a teenager? What were the most challenging things for you growing up through that most tumultuous of times?
I think I was just always going back to reading books and playing computer games. If something in the outside world seemed like this is not as easy as I wished for, I would just read a book, put myself in a different world, live in that for a while, and then just come back. So I was jumping in and out of the world and I still do it like that today. I just don't care too much about the 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 difficulties, what could happen in the future. I live now, and then if I see myself like thinking about it, I just open up a book or a computer game and distract myself from that.
Do you think that behavior is a really important asset in being a professional poker player?
Yeah, not taking things too seriously. So what I mean by that is not being too emotional about stuff. It's not always good. Sometimes you get a little dull emotionally. But then, the kid wakes up and starts crying.
There was no kids back then, no, George. I
have to close the door.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it. I understand. So is that mentality you were talking about the ability to stop yourself from time traveling and to recover from any setbacks that might be going on by learning about shifting yourself into a different, either a mental environment or a physical environment? Is that a George Danzer thing, or is that a German thing?
Not a German thing. The Germans, they live in the reality most of the time, and they try to get it right. And if something is a little bit wrong, then they really take it personally and try to make it right. So that's more my thing.
It's more your thing. So you're playing poker. You talked there. You mentioned you came up to about 2005, and you're still not playing professionally. Then you had a really deep run in 2006 in the main event, right?
Yeah.
Now, so you're still not professional then, right?
Nope.
Okay. So from what I gather, that was a bit of a really challenging moment for you, right? So you're going really deep in the World Series of Poker main event. You lose like a series of hands that you mathematically should have won. I believe, reading your previous interviews, that hit you quite hard. Talk about how you was feeling in that moment and how it affected your life.
Yeah, it was quite crazy, because the chance to go really deep and you notice it something that was, I think, the biggest prize for the highest first prize that was paid out in the World Series, the 2006 one, and you noticed, wow, this is a big chance, and you get really excited always in the morning. I always put up my suit and my nice shirt when I went to the main event, and I had a good feeling, because back then nobody had a clue how to play, or very few people had a clue how to play No Limit Hold'em. So I was feeling really good. And then when that happened, at the first moment, I was a little upset, but really quick, I went back into my world, and you can even see it on the tapes of my big hand against Dimitri Nobles, where I lost the majority of my stack, that I was ready to run out the room, and then I turned around, and then I was back in a good place, and I went to congratulate him and said well played, and sat back down and tried to continue with my, I think I had 23,000 left out of the 500,000 that I had before the hand started. So it was the same thing, and then it still was my biggest cash up to that point, even busting in like 300 plays. It was 40,000, which, as not being a professional, as a student, if you just take it in a vacuum, it was still a pretty nice cash. So I wasn't too upset, actually, the next 2 days. We went out a little bit in Las Vegas, and there was like 1 or 2 days that don't totally remember what happened in the 2 days after the bust out, like a little bit of a shock, but it was good. Like 3 days later, and I went back. We played like 2 more days of cash game, and then went back home and finally bought a pair of clothes, because as a student I was always running around with the same jacket for like 3 years, and then when I came back, a couple of friends put me in a cab and drove to the next good dress store and bought me like 4 or 5 outfits, because I was wearing 2 things. I had the Brazilian football thing from, I think, 86, when they lost really bad in the World Championships, and everybody was throwing the shirts out of the window, and my dad he's German, right? So he was on the streets and picking them up. So I had like 6 or 7 of those jerseys from 86, the Brazil jersey, and I was wearing that for like my first 4 poker tournaments in a gray jacket, or no, it was not gray. It was a brown jacket I had over the Brazilian jerseys. And
I like it.
So
that moment when you lose your stack and you're just about to walk off and headbutt a wall, but then you compose yourself and come back and shake his hand, and then you say that in the aftermath you're not really thinking about it too much. You're actually turn it to gratitude more by, oh, look how grateful I am that I won this amount of money, not, oh shit, I didn't win the couple of million that was up there. That is an unusual mindset for me. It's the opposite of how I would be, right? So I'm interested, how did that come into being? How did that type of George Danzer's personality come into being? Did you work at it? Did you meditate? Did it come from your parents? Is it genetic? How was you able to become so calm and so present in the moment in a good way?
I think it's a kind of a meditation from chess, because told you about the Austrian guy. His name was Matzinger. He was always big into meditating during playing chess. And the same thing with my second coach in chess. He was called Unterreitmeier in Germany. He was always, saying, sit on your hands and just take some time off while sitting at the board, and the opponent is thinking. Like, try to think about nothing to recharge a little bit until it's time, until the focus shifts again to you and you have to think again. So and those chess games, they take a long time. So they were taking up to 8-9 hours sometimes. They had a very bad mode back then, where even when you were 15, you had like 2 hours per side for 20 moves, and then another one for 40, then another 1 hour for 20 moves, and then another half an hour. So that was like a total of 7 hours for the game when you're 15 years old, right? You want to run around and do crazy stuff. So the way to what I was trying to do is, when the opponent was thinking and I didn't want to go around but sit at the table, I was trying to think about nothing until he hits the clock. So because you have to wake up at some point and start thinking again, right?
Yeah.
So the trigger was like, okay, when the clock hits and it makes a certain sound, you wake up again. And then you have a couple of hours a day during the tournaments to train on these things. And then I was doing the same in poker and just have some time where I don't think about anything. And then what happens at some point is that when you're thinking, you think more from an outside perspective. You're not as emotionally involved, but you see stuff happening as if you were a different person. And then you can look at it more, a little bit more relaxed, because the stuff that just happened didn't happen to you. It just happened to, some guy, and it was quite funny actually when it happened. So
yeah, no, I
got to laugh about it too, instead of getting bitter. And I think even my friends, they were more upset about the situation than me.
So this form of meditation that you learn through chess, I assume, I'm assuming here, I'm a man full of assumptions, that you're the same in life, right? So if you have a big bust up with your wife or your partner, you would kind of go into your own mind's eye and just kind of chill out a little bit. And like, are you relaxed in life and able to handle life's challenges in the same way that you would handle your challenges in chess and poker because of that early guidance?
I tried to handle it like that. That I don't know if it's always a good thing, to
Oh,
just.
you'll know through feedback, right?
No, people think, "Oh, George, how are you so relaxed?" But sometimes I think that's probably not even the best way to react in that point, right?
Okay.
If somebody tells you something and you go like, "Yeah, nice," and the expectation was like, "Oh, fucking awesome," then it's just the wrong reaction too. And
you're talking about your wife coming downstairs in a beautiful dress, right? What do you think it is? Yes, right.
Or like the fanciest dinner and the chef's out there, he comes out the kitchen. How was it? I was, not right. The worst.
I like it. If you want to be as talented as someone like George Danzer, then you've got to get your learning aspects of the game in check. And Run It Once has this covered. At Run It Once Training, it gives you the chance to learn from some of the best players in the world with 2 new training videos added every single day. If you sign up through once.run/hero learn, you will get access to 3 free elite videos, including one from Phil himself. Now, Run It Once Poker is the new fun place to play poker online, and you can even find yourself sitting across from Phil, who plays and streams regularly on the site. If you're signing up for the first time, then your treasure will be a 100% welcome bonus up to €600. So to take advantage of this, sign up through once.run/hero play. Now back to our interview with George. Can you remember, right, in every story, it doesn't matter if we're reading a book or we're watching a movie, there's a moment in the hero's journey where he travels from the ordinary world to the special world, right? So if you think of like the Wizard of Oz, for example, Dorothy's ordinary world is Kansas, and then her special world is Oz, right? And for you, your ordinary world was Bavaria, Germany, going to university. That was your ordinary world. And the special world was the poker world, because it's almost like you jump on that Hogwarts Express and you go to this little world that the other world doesn't even know it exists. Like we travel around to Barcelona, Vienna, we see the same people. And then when we tell our friends who are not in that world that people play for millions of dollars playing card games, they can't believe it because it's not even in their periphery, right? Can you remember a time when you realized that this world was so different to the one that you were in, and how it felt to want to get there and be in that world, like permanently?
I think there was a situation really early where I was playing online poker, where I noticed that it was a different world. There was a tournament, I think it was called the Students World Championship on some fancy site. Maybe Royal Vegas Poker. I don't know if it's around anymore. It must have been in 2002 or 2003, so really early days of online poker. And there were 60,000 people playing it. And I played it for like 20 hours straight and finished in 6th place or something. And the first prize was like 5 figures, and it was a free roll. So wow. you didn't have to pay a buy-in. And that was the first time where I saw this other world where we were playing for sums in a game that nobody in Germany has heard of. Like a couple of people had, but not really. Like 1,000 people in Germany play Texas Hold'em, and I'm playing against 60,000 people, of which like 59,000 were from the USA, and I could do it over the internet. And that's the first time I was in this different world. And then live, I think it was the first EPT I played. Probably 2006 too. Maybe 2005 in Baden. And it was just a very beautiful place, and we were playing for a lot, and there were cash games on the side where the buy-in was like what in my student world people were earning per month, and that was the buying on the table, and the biggest winner would have a year's salary. And I was actually playing the game. So then I noticed, this could be. I might try to have to try it to make a career out of it. And at the same time, I noticed that when I went back telling the stories from the 2006 World Series, for example, that people were, this is not possible. You're shitting me. This. There's a tournament in Vegas. How many people played?
Yeah.
How much did you get for 300th place?
Yeah, because it sounds like a loss, doesn't it? But it sounds like I finished 300th. Like I remember doing something similar to my dad. He was like, "What are you happy about that for?"
Yeah. So those were between 2003 and 6. I was still going back and forth because I was not playing professionally. So I was really like a month I was in this world and a month I was in the other world, and it was not always easy. Most of the times I wouldn't tell people what I'm doing when I'm going on the tournaments or how much we play for.
Why was that?
I think they just couldn't understand it, and they were asking like dumb questions and wouldn't get or wouldn't take my answer when I said, no, you can play better than the other guy if you use your brain correctly. And I said, no, it's all luck. And I said, okay, whatever. I was not at that point where I was trying to convince people that, yeah, you can do it. I was just, I'll do my thing. I was in the nerdy world that I had in school. I'll do my thing. I play 2 weeks of chess without leaving the house, and then to win this one tournament. And people were asking me, what are you doing that for, right? Don't you want to come out, play some basketball? No, I'm learning some openings in chess. And that was the same thing again. And then in university, with people that were open-minded, it was okay. With my friends, they knew what I was doing, right? So we had a place with six guys renting a house in Freiburg. But those were fine. But when I went out at night, I wouldn't tell anybody in this world what I was doing if I wasn't forced to, which happened often enough. So.
Was there ever, well, as you were moving from this ordinary world to this special world, was there anything pulling you back? Like was there like friends, parents, fear of succeeding? Was there anything at all that was pulling you back, or was you just like, I'm fucking going for this? Like how was that pull?
Yeah, from family, they tried, I think, but I just ignored it. So, like, not just blocked it out or something. I didn't care about it. If somebody told me, you're crazy, and I said, yeah, maybe, and how I was approaching stuff anyway. So I think there were some pulls, and if I remember, I think my dad, he went to the World Series, I think on my 11th World Series, he visited Vegas, I think. It was the first time he went to a poker tournament ever.
Wow.
He never was there. And my mom hasn't visited one. So
how did your dad feel about poker? Because he was one of the driving forces behind your chess. So it's one game that I imagine he would have been happy if you played chess professionally. So how was he feeling about you playing this other game professionally?
He didn't get it that it was not a game of chance.
Right.
And I wasn't into arguing. Still, I don't know if the last time I really argued with somebody, I couldn't remember. So yeah, I wasn't into fighting him to accept that it's not a game of chance. I was like, okay, maybe it's not. Then I keep playing, and then my sister, she came over to Vegas. We had good times, and she was at the tournaments. But so there was a little bit of from outside forces that tried to pull me back. Of course, the university, the professor, he wasn't amused at all because I was doing quite a good job there and was working for very cheap money too in that institution, right? And he was expecting me to finish there and then start working in the laboratory. And I said, nah, I have to travel a little bit. And he said, you're crazy, you can't do it. And I said, yeah, still gonna do it. And then like 2 days later I left for the first tournament.
You said there that you can't remember the last time you argued with somebody. Now, as somebody who argues with almost everybody, and I can see how that is detrimental to my life and how I need to kind of like, I find it really difficult to differentiate between debating and arguing. They always kind of like merge, and I always end up trying to overpower people, right? And I know that that's wrong, and I'm trying to deal with that as best I can and learn through books actually of improving that. But then at the other end of the scale, there's somebody who kind of doesn't argue a lot, right? Which I imagine also has its pitfalls. Talk about how not being argumentative, how's that affected your life, your decisions, your relationships?
So one of the bad things that comes with not arguing a lot is that you're really bad at arguing. So if there is an argument, I have no idea. I'm gonna lose. I'm just gonna take it wrong. So sometimes when one comes up, like it doesn't take too long. I just, I wave the white flag at some point, but I do it wrong, like kind of passive aggressive way. I say, no, don't do it again. And it's like every half a year. That's not really a big argument, It's like kind of okay. This could start being an argument, and then there's one sentence, and then I give up. I already lost. So I don't even know what's the better way, because arguing is mostly about trying to convince somebody else to change his mind, right? That's why we're even arguing. And for me, the easiest way not to get into a argument is just think about, is it like the chance higher if I start going into an argument here that he's going to change his mind? And most of the times I said, oh, it doesn't matter at all. In this point, we're not going to change anything. I better shut up at all. We're just wasting time. And I just pull back from that, which sometimes is not good either, because I think some things you have to argue to advance, right? Else, if you're not arguing, you're just standing still. Nothing is happening. And I think, I don't want to waste the time, and I pull out of the argument and don't do anything at all. And then some things linger and they don't get flushed out. And so I suck at arguing, and I let things linger that should be argued about at some time. So yeah.
And what about
arguing all the time is not as bad as you think?
I don't know about that. Connected to that, then, what about empathy? So as somebody who argues a lot, I'm not really great at empathy. I have to really work hard at it. Like to see the world through somebody else's eyes. I have to work really hard at it. I'm one of these people who's like thinks that 7.5 billion people think like me, right? So. Now, where are you on the empathy scale? Are you good at it? Are you bad at it? We'll talk about that a little bit.
That's a difficult one. I don't know exactly how would you say what how would I know if I'm like on the top of the scale
I guess
or on the bottom of the scale from 1 to 10 in empathy?
I would imagine. Well, for me, it's feedback. So it would be the most classic feedback is your wife saying, "You never fucking listen to me," right, or something like that, and because you said, didn't you, earlier on, that arguing is trying to change the other person's mind. Well, there's nothing worse than trying to change the other person's mind, and if you are trying to change that other person, you're not seeing their perspective. If you can have empathy with their situation and find a grain of truth in what they're saying, then you can be more present with them and you can diffuse a situation. You're less likely to go into an argument. So I guess it's feedback. I guess like how do people relate to George Danzer in relationships? Like, does your wife find you frustrating? Does she find that you're a very good listener? To me, it's feedback. Yeah.
So in that regard, there is two problems. I think one of the feedbacks I get is that I have empathy for the wrong persons. So people come to me and say, "This idiot, do you know what he did?" And then they tell me, and I go like, "Yeah, but look at this from his perspective, right? You have to understand that maybe this and this happened. So for me, I tell them, relax a little bit, because it's automatic that he reacted this way. If you look at it from his perspective, maybe it's even the right thing, right? Game theoretically, he's doing the right thing by overreacting and this or doing this wrong thing. And that's a very bad thing, because then people say, you monkey, I'm not, you don't have empathy for me. You have empathy for the other guy that I'm trying to give the bad guy story of here. And because I'm really neutral in those kind of situations. So probably I'm right in the middle, like on the balance of the scale regarding empathy.
I like what you say there. Because that is empathy, right? So someone comes along and says that it's a classic bully in school, right? So, there's this bully in school, and everyone wants to beat up on the bully, right? But if you're looking from the bully's perspective, there's something going on in his life that's turned him into a bully. And if we can understand why that is, maybe he's being bullied at home or whatever, So I like that way of thinking. It's very much more rational and logical than emotional. So, like, what's it like going through life being more rational and logical than emotional? Because I know I have the ability to switch between both quite violently. And I know that if I get too rational and emotional, again, like my missus can like go crazy. Because she's like, how can you be so rational right now? Like, especially in the middle of an argument or something. And I find this with poker players a lot. Like I often wonder, does having that ability to be so rational and to control your emotions on the poker table, how does that affect like a relationship, for example, where you need to show emotion? Like how does that show up in your life?
You probably have to get my girlfriend in here for that. She can explain the emotional stuff really good. She's a drama director.
Wow.
She's like on the opposite scale. She has drama every day in the theater, and the actors are crazy, the bosses are crazy, and you're trying to direct your piece, and everything goes to shambles every time, and in the end there is still a premiere. So I feel a little bit of that, have the emotions, and my daughter is crazy.
Yeah, an emotional
She's the
firewire.
best and emotional from the moment she comes up in the morning until she falls asleep crying. It's very emotional. So yeah, it works out. I think we're doing fine. The relationship is in a good spot, and I think she would agree.
She better agree.
She better agree, because else
because they can't argue.
to go to bed and
no, she's got
nothing about it.
Yeah, she's got to agree because you're just going to let it linger otherwise. Talk a little bit about, you're a dad now, and we just talked a lot about empathy. We talked about emotions. We talked about not arguing. You know, now you're in this position where basically in the next, how old's your daughter?
She's gonna be 3 end of the year.
3. So in the next what is it? 3 years, maybe 3-4 years. Like, you and your wife are really going to have a big impression on what her foundational personality will look like. Are you the type of person that stays awake at night thinking about that responsibility and worrying about it? Or you, like you are in chess or when you were earlier, just taking each day as it comes? Like, how does parenting invade your mind? What are some of the things, the self-talk that goes on in your head around this responsibility?
Yeah, the same. I don't care about, bought like 5 to 10 books about how education shapes the kids and everything, and I read like the first paragraph of the first one and I just threw them in the corner because they're all bullshit. So I'm just doing my thing, you know. But I always think that kids just copy what you do. So only thing I can do, and arguing doesn't help at all, you know. And you can't force stuff on them. The only thing I can do is just try to do stuff to give her a chance to copy. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and that's all how I think about it. Just try to be as much as like the person that I want her to be later on, but it doesn't really work either. So I'm really winging it as a dad, I have to admit, right? Everybody would say, oh, you're so logical, you have it all figured out and stuff.
You're like, no way. No way.
I'm just doing it. People at the kindergarten, they look at me, they go, this is not fun. He's not for real, right? Because I just, I let her be herself, and we're in Germany, so kids are better be good, right?
If she gets a little, I don't know if they do this in Germany or not, but if she gets to a point where the kids have to invite their parents in to stand up and say what they do, and you went in there, would you feel a sense of pride talking about the fact you're a professional poker player, or would there be an element of shame? And I don't mean like so polarized. Like, where would it be on the scale? How would you feel talking about that?
Right now, I'm not playing poker for since she was born, so I have another job now. So if I was asked now, I just have the other job that I would talk about because I really like it too.
Okay, let's go back. Let's go back and pretend.
Pretend she was there and I was still playing poker now.
Yeah,
so just as 3 years ago, and I was. I don't know. I think it's really difficult to be a professional poker player when you have a kid. For me, it's impossible. That's why I stopped. So if other people ask me how, not in a dad relationship, of if I was proud about being a poker player, I would be neutral about it. I see it as every other, like a musician, a sports figure, or an engineer. For me, it's all the same. As long as people try to be good at it and respect other people that are doing something else and not see one higher as the other one, I'm fine with everybody. So I would see it the same as some of the if I talk about the job as a poker player, I would see it the same, not different than if I was an engineer or if I was a football player.
Yeah, it's. I always ask that question because it's really interesting. Because when I speak to professional poker players and say, "Would you want your children to be a professional poker player?" After talking about all the freedom and the excitement of being a professional poker player, the answer is always no. And then it's always, well, if you love this lifestyle and this poker, so why wouldn't you want your kids to do it? It's such a paradox, you know.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is with the creativity. There is not a lot of creativity if you're a Texas Hold'em professional poker player. So if you want your kid to be creative, that's not the right career. And I think I wouldn't do it for 40 years. Only play poker for 40 years, and that wouldn't satisfy. I think 10 years is perfect, you know. I would love my kid to have a 10-year poker career. I'm totally into that.
So what you're talking about here is in your kind of like we'll go over to this in now about vision, you know. What you're saying is you never foresaw yourself being Doyle Brunson playing in the Bellagio when you're touching 100. What you've described so far is I played chess, and then when I didn't like it, I moved on to Texas Hold'em. When I didn't like it, I moved on to mixed games, and when I didn't like it, I moved on. So you never wanted to be, it was always a short-term thing, this poker thing, or did you have your child and then had to make a decision about poker?
I was already at that point where I thought if I have to, if I stop here, I'm good. So after I won the Play of the Year and still had another good 2 years after that, I was thinking, okay, that was the poker career. I can do another 5 years and travel. I was still having fun doing the tournament, but I didn't have that like ultimate drive to win something and prove that I could do, because I had done it. So at that point, I was ready to move on. And before that, when I was even before doing it, I never thought about doing something forever, because I'm always looking out for new challenges. What can I do? And it could have happened that I just stopped playing in 2013 if some good opportunity came up and I thought, oh, that's the next adventure that I want to take on. It could have happened, or it could have happened that I played for 15 years and then took the next one. But I couldn't imagine a world where I did it for more than 20 years.
Yeah, it's interesting.
There's 0%.
It's interesting because the archetypal kind of hero's journey, you've kind of gone full circle. You've gone into this special world, the poker world. You've found your treasure, the 2014 Player of the Year, and now you've come back to the ordinary world, armed with all that knowledge and experience that you picked up in the special world. So what I want to ask you is, what's it like back now in the ordinary world? Do you miss the special world? And how do you feel as a human being, having gone through that experience as a professional poker player?
Yeah, it's great having that extra experience. I could be here and have probably a similar job if I just went to studying and then through some companies. And now I'm running a startup, so that could have been the journey the other way. Went to a big business and then said, that's too much, worked out here, but now I want to start my own thing, and then went into a startup. But then this whole adventure, like the big adventure, would be missing. And the poker adventure, it was really special. Like all the traveling, the people you meet when you play poker, and all the locations, all the freedom for this time, right? While you're playing it and while you're doing okay in poker, the freedom is infinite, and you can really think about whatever. You can look at society from the outside and think about what are they doing and why. And you don't have the time if you're in a job. You're looking, so how's the job going? How's the family, the food, the rent, the city? You have to have your friendships somehow chugging along, else you're gonna feel lonely, and this normal life just keeps you from getting the outside look. And as a poker player, you get that, and if you do that for 10 years, you come back and you feel blessed that you got all that experience in.
And one last thing I want to touch upon before I let you go is no hero makes it on their own. You know, like Frodo Baggins didn't get to Mordor on his own, did he? You know, like he had a lot of people helping him out because he needed all those different skills and all those talents. When you arrived and you've talked a little bit in chess about your mentors. I won't try to recite their names because I'll butcher them. But you obviously remember the influence that those two guys had, not just on your chess career, but it sounds like on your poker career and in your life in terms of this meditative chess brain. Who else in your life has been really important mentors when it comes to poker?
So, as I was really early in the poker boom, there were no really like coaches or anything that you could turn to at that point. We were all winging it back in the 2002, 3, 4, even then 5, 6 when I started to take it seriously. So I had like friends in a group. Like I traveled a lot with Jan Heitmann, and we were talking a lot, but it was more like equal to equal. You would talk about strategy and learn from each other, but there was no like the master that teaches you how to play poker. You had to do it on your own back then.
So if you're Luke Skywalker, there was no Obi-Wan Kenobi in your life by the time you'd reached poker. Maybe your Obi-Wan Kenobis were those chess.
I think so. Yes, the chess coaches, they were big in how I approached the poker studies and how I did. So the Obi-Wan Kenobi is gonna be Mr. Matzinger. I don't know where he is now.
Oh, that's such a shame.
I missed contact. But when there is some time, I should go on a tour and try to find him.
Yeah, that'd be cute. And every story has a villain, right? And a villain can be a person. It could be a belief system. It can be an animal. It could be a building. It could be anything, right? What has been the villain or the villains in your life, George, and how have you managed to slay them?
The villains is not being creative. That's the villain for me. So just standing still, and it's easy to prevent. You let it come a little bit, and at some point you noticed, oh, that's too much standing still, and then you kick down the door and continue on your journey. Well, I've really appreciated our time together, George. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, and I wish you all the best in your new startup, which I believe is an esports startup. Is that right? Yeah, mostly esports. Yep, so I hope you do really well with that. I hope you continue winging, being a father, and do not let too many things linger in your life. Thanks for joining us. Sure, no problem. It was great talking to you.